All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the fourth episode of the first season of This, That, and the Other. My name is Varun Chandramohan, your host for today. Seated next to me is a trainer at Luminary Learning Solutions, a full-time mom of two, and a design and technical consultant for lace and textiles. She's also my co-host for the day, Sitari Medagama. Everyone, welcome to the show. All right, so This, That, and the Other is a series that tackles some of the biggest, most controversial challenges HR and senior managers face within an organization. So we've so far covered affairs at work, side hustles while being employed, what does it take to be successful in business, whether it's luck or strategy. And this week, we're going to be talking about diversity and equality. Are we there yet? And spoiler alert, no, we are not, and hence why we're having this chat. So, all right, it's time to introduce our guest. She is the director at ATA International and a senior vice president, human resources at Fortune. Oshana Dias is here with us today. Hello, Oshana.
Hi, good afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you're joining from.
Good afternoon, indeed. All right, our next guest is connecting with us all the way from Brazil. She has over 15 years of experience in HR in larger national and multinational companies, and she's currently the HR director at CGG South America. Gabrielle Botelho is here with us today. Hello, Gabrielle.
Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to join the conference.
It's a pleasure to have you. And we're still waiting for our next guest, who is an entrepreneur with extensive professional network and a background in business politics. He's currently the managing director of the World Pension Forum in South Africa. And Chris Cohes will attempt to join us should the technical issues be resolved during the session. And we'll be happy to welcome him during this show. All right, so let's dive straight in from the context of an organization. Let's look at this from a corporate world and from an organization's point of view. Globally speaking, how would you define equality and diversity? How would you define that?
Should I start?
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
this is open to either of you. Yeah, yeah.
okay, perfect. So, thank you again for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here with you all, and I'm excited to be here. When it comes to diversity, we usually say diversity and inclusion, and of course, equality is one of the parameters of the diversity. You say that because when it comes to diversity itself, it's to bring different profiles with different perspectives, different backgrounds, different races, for example, to our organization, to really have a very plural environment of working. But we don't say diversity alone because we can bring different profiles, as I said, but it's they need to be included, they need to feel included and to have a voice, to raise their hands in a meeting full of people, for example, because they really feel a part of that organization, they really feel that they belong to the organization. So diversity is to bring the different profiles, as I said. Inclusion is the person to feel openness, to feel that they work for a fair organization, they feel that they belong to the organization. So both combined, we are improving and we're moving forward with diversity and inclusion culture.
Interesting. And
Yeah,
Oshana,
so
any thoughts on your take
yeah,
on that?
building on that, yeah. So for me, I mean, diversity is actually the mix, and I would say inclusion is actually just making it work. So you could have diversity and you can have the mix, but does it really gel together and work properly? So when it works properly, it's then diversity and inclusion for me, and I think then that's the best result.
All right. And yeah, I want to. One second. Okay. Yeah. All right. Just a quick one about diversity. What impact does culture differences across the world have in implementing equality and diversity in the corporate world? Um, I'm sure there's an impact, and does that allow you to or does culture stop you from implementing this across the world in the same way, or does the definition of diversity and equality change? What are your thoughts on that?
I would say that yes, it would be different. So let's say you are a global organization with 3 locations around the world. How we would go about it would be definitely. So you need to first the ground situation is, and then kind of see, okay, what are you ready for at that point of time? Because I mean, diversity is huge, right? It's gender, it's race, it's ethnicity, it's a lot of things. You might start with one small aspect, based on the background or based on where you are. But I think still the first step is the awareness part of it. So first you need to see where you are, do a market study or like kind of a survey and see what is it out there, and then start with awareness of first what diversity and inclusion is in your organization, even if there are different cultures across.
Yeah, from my point of view, when it comes to diversity, it's really important to have the commitment of all employees. Many people think that diversity is HR agenda, but it's not. It's related to everybody in the organization. It starts with the way we build our relationships in an open mind, in a very welcome way, because we need to welcome diversity. We need to think from their perspective, not from our own perspective. So to implement a very successful diversity and inclusion program, policy, whatever, we need to have the commitment of all employees, from the board to the bottom. So, and it starts for me with the bottom, with the top. Why I'm saying that? Because, for example, diversity for me should be a commitment in our business strategy. It should be reflected there. People should really be all together looking for diversity and inclusion in our work environment, because it's not only the right thing to do when it comes to people, but it's the right thing to do when it comes to business. It's proven, and you have many research conducted by McKinsey, for example, for other big companies in the world, saying that if you have a diverse teams, they are more likely outperform when compared with teams that are not diverse at all. So really need to look for diversity and inclusion to improve your business, to improve your results, to keep growing throughout the years, you know. And then it's the best way to convince, because it's not easy. People usually think that diversity and inclusion, it's a nice thing to have. No, it's not a nice thing to have. It's a must have for all business, all kind of business in all places in the world. And for example, from my previous experience, I was heading up diversity and inclusion there. What we did was, based on the business strategy, we come with some diversity and inclusion target. So for that organization, they were working with improving the diversity aspect of gender, of nationality, of background, because it was an oil and gas industry, and then all employees look like the same background, same university, same way of thinking. So we were working these different targets, and it was targeted in recruitment, it was targeted for any leader of the organization, because we really believe that it's a work for everybody.
That's quite interesting, Gabriel. So what about Oshana? Anything that you can add from a Sri Lankan context? Is there any challenges, specific challenges that you've faced um, in sort of implementing this across the board, and any challenges that you face in terms of culture being there in the middle, like anything specific, or any stories? You don't have to mention names or company names or anything like that, but in your experience, anything that you've come across?
Sure. So I think I have been fortunate to be in one company throughout my career, which is embraced diversity and inclusion. So I come from Fortitude, which is 100% owned by Brandix, and the majority of the workforce of Brandix is women because they are the machine operators, right? So I've not had issues in terms of implementing the whole diversity and inclusion agenda there at Fortitude. However, I have heard that it has not been as easy in Sri Lanka for all companies to do so. And these are due to various reasons. It's mostly due to the top management thinking, like, what is the return am I going to get out of it? Is it just going to be a cost, or why should I do this? Or some might be like, then shouldn't there be something equally for men as well, right? If you talk about the gender part of it. So I have heard these that there have been certain challenges. But there are also organizations who do get through it, and I think the first step for that is awareness. Like, awareness of diversity and inclusion is just not something you want to put on your website, and it's not just some kind of marketing thing, but actually what is the result to the company with diversity and inclusion. So today I was just reading up on a McKinsey report, right? And it says that where there are more females in the leadership team, they do have stats to prove that business performance has increased over the years. Right. So maybe you'd go after some of those researchers and facts where it has worked in different parts of the world or your industry, and then start that way rather than saying, you know what, I need a budget, I need to do DNI, I need to recruit so many women, I need to check that so many promotions go to women, or that my salaries are equal between men and women. So it's again how you approach it if you are having a challenge.
Yeah, and if I could add as well, because what you see a lot currently is the unconscious bias. What is an unconscious bias? It's stereotypes, okay? It's for example, and then in the recruitment, we are full of unconscious bias because we tend to recruit people that are similar than us, that have the same background as we do, and for example, we tend to trust more in people that are close to us when compared with people that are in other regions of the world, because again, I'm seeing these people frequently, so I feel comfortable to deal with these people. So this is the first step for me, is how can we really identify the unconscious bias that are driving their leadership, their organization in a way, and bring it to light, because again, it's unconscious, guys. Sometimes I do things and I'm not aware that I'm doing that thing. So it's important that we as a team, we as a leaders of an organization, we treat it together. We address it together. We try to in a way correct the way we are behaving when we are facing different realities, because it's very common that we analyze from our perspective again. So it's important to see from the other's perspective. It's about practicing empathy. So it's not because I didn't face that difficult. It's not because of that I didn't face the harassment, for example. It's not happening. So we have many situations that you can show and exemplify that it's really a reality.
Wow, yeah, absolutely. We can talk.
So in that context, are you saying that in the organizational policies and in the KPIs, how would you actually address the equal rights and the equal opportunities? Is there an overlapping context there, or how would you define and make that happen from an organizational leadership context?
Should I start maybe? So from my prior experience, what we did was the following. So we established 4 KPIs for the organization worldwide, okay? And for sure with some flexibility, because when I look to Brazil, diversity in terms of race is something that you really need to work on and improve on the way ahead. So for Brazil, in addition to these 4 pillars that I mentioned before, nationality, gender, background, and aid, we also included race locally. And then what we did was the following. We analyzed each team of the organization, because again, it's from the bottom to the top. So for that team, that leader is recruiting based on gender diversity, race diversity, nationality diversity. So how this team is made of? So what kind of profiles do we have in that team to really see that team as a diverse one? So it's something that you are pursuing there. And another thing that we are doing was the blinded recruitment. So the hiring manager, he or she doesn't have any information about the profile of that candidate. So he doesn't know about the gender, he doesn't know about the age, he doesn't know about the background, in which university that person completed the graduation, for example. Why that? Again, to avoid the similarity. So in the oil and gas industry, we are very male oriented. It's a true. So what you're looking for is really to improve the gender gap that we still have. And what you brought is very important, because again, it's not only about equality, it's about equity. It's about really guarantee that the same person, for example, in the same job, I have different profiles, but they receive the same salary for the position. We don't have any bias when it comes to the salary as well. It's not because the guy is a man, he's receiving more than a woman that's performing the same. But for sure, based on the same level of experience, same level of competence, this is something that you need to consider to pay the same rent, because in the same salary, you can have different rents, for example.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that's lovely, Gabriel. So I think my experience has been more, we started with the policies and the equal opportunity, unconscious, the biasness. So those are anyway a part of, the policies and the handbooks. But how we started upon the whole diversity and inclusion journey at Fortitude was, first we actually did a survey. And we looked at, okay, what is the current situation? What's the ground situation? So to understand what are everyone's perceptions of it and also feelings. Then thereafter only we launched onto our DNI agenda. I can go into a bit of detail on how we did that program, but I'm not sure whether I should do it now. But if you're asking me in terms of like KPIs, no, we don't have it on KPIs per person or per role. But at an organizational level, we do have in terms of gender to reach a certain percentage by a certain year, and we are going on to that goal. But I can go through the process that we adopted to kind of drive DNI at Fortitude. Shall I go through that now, or shall I do that later?
Yeah, I mean, if you're okay, yeah, sure, we can.
Okay, so we did this survey. And just first got like what the ground situation is, what do people feel about it. Then we went on to launch DNI at Fortitude. So we started with like a panel discussion, getting a variety of personalities to come and talk about it, and also to have people to ask questions. But in this, we also ensured that we had something called the DNI pledge, where every fortnite kind of took this pledge and said, I am diversity. And there was this laptop sticker and everything that also went with it, so that there's some kind of identity. So then thereafter, we didn't stop there, but then we had smaller group trainings to build awareness on DNI. And those are smaller groups, like 15 people per group. And we did it globally. We did it virtually for the ones overseas, but we covered the entire organization with that training. And that training is called Better Together. And the first agenda item of that training is for groups that are randomly assigned to come up with your definition of diversity. So you need to say, okay, diversity is blank, blank, blank. And one program that I witnessed, a group came up with the definition. Diversity is like a pulse and ball and cheese sandwich. So Gabriel, pulse and ball is a very spicy. It's like a spicy sambal. Yeah, right. So normally you would, yeah, I was not like so. Normally you would have a cheese sandwich, right? Or you would have in Sri Lanka what you call pol sambal and bread. But now you actually mix the pol sambal, which is spicy, with the cheese and the bread, and it works so well together. The flavors are so good, right? So it makes it work. And I thought, I mean, that was a great definition of diversity and how it works together. So, and things like that. So I was in that training probably like 1.5 years ago, and I still remember that definition. So, and people came up with various definition, and that's something always in your head, and you kind of, remember that without always talking about percentages and all of that. So I thought that would be something interesting to share.
Yeah, very good.
That's really great, Oshana, and it is very descriptive of how you have actually taken it on and as a company. And also, Gabriel, if you can share something from your experience, like Oshana's, something very practical so that we can share it with the audience would be very good.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we had many initiatives like that in Brazil as well and across the globe. But one and two that called my attention. One that was initiated by HR, what is this unconscious bias training for all the leaders. So in this session itself, you could really heard about how they live, how they live the values, how they see the situation across their teams as well. So it was very based on their experience and how they were really living the situation day by day work. So one example that they brought, for example, was that it would be very weird for me to see a man full of tattoos taking care of makeup line in a beauty company. And then my prior experience was at L'Oreal. And then I raised my hand and said, Guy, you are completely wrong. Because in my prior experience, we had exactly this. Because it's about how I feel. It's how I feel identified for something that really triggers me, that really motivates me for working something. And then the second thing that I bring as an example was the employee resource groups that came to life from the bottom. So we received many employees that came to us to really ask for, okay, I'd like really to have an employee resource group in our company. So perfect, let's do it. And then they created many employee resource groups that were bringing their questions, that were bringing their agenda to the board. And it's awesome because, again, as I said at the beginning, diversity and inclusion is something that really is related to everybody. So everybody has a role to play to really guarantee that in our culture, in our work environment, we are really living diversity and inclusion principles, to really be open, really collaborative, listen to others' perspective. It's really important that myself as an individual, as a professional of that organization, I'm really taking care of my behavior as a member of that organization. It's so the employee resource group brings it all the time because it brings awareness. It's explained from their perspective because it's a leadership in a way. So, for example, one of the causes that I'm really attached to is the race cause. I'm not Black, but it's something that I'm really motivated to work on, to strive for, to really raise my hand and fight for people from Black people,
Yeah, absolutely, very true. Just to interject over there and just to let the audience know, thank you for your questions. Your questions are coming in. We are getting your feedback, and we've got a few comments saying that this is quite a very insightful session already. I mean, 30 minutes into the session. So thank you for your feedback. Do continue to give them to us, and do continue to send your questions in because we are in conversation with Gabriel and Oshana, and we are talking about gender or rather equality and diversity, and are we really there yet? So I have two questions. I have an audience question and I had a separate question that came in from different people. So I'm trying to sort of put them together and ask you one question. What do you think of diversity for the sake of diversity? And you know, organizations right now are sort of rushing to hire minorities or particular social group just to show that they are inclusive, or rather even I think I shouldn't say just to show that, maybe even to make sure that they're not left behind. So some of these initiatives, and right, like Oshana rightly said, you know, there's a little write up about it, and you know, instructions are trickled down saying, hey, we need to have this percentage of women, or this percentage of a particular minority group. So where does this come in? Because we do start we're starting to see diversity for the sake of diversity in terms of from in the forms of quotas and in the forms of we see this in universities, we see this it's starting to happen in workplaces. Any thoughts on that? Like how would you what are your thoughts on that, and how would you address that if that's not right, or so to speak?
I think it's quite detrimental, because you would just kind of get those quotas in, and sometimes I know it could be just to have that the different colors on your website, right? And so that you have multiracial people, and could be a marketing thing. But actually, if those people don't feel included, and if they're not a part of the organization, then that becomes quite disarming, right? And then what would happen is, actually, and the world is small, right? There is social media and all of it. In the end, it might actually not do your company brand really good in the long run. So I would really say, like, you shouldn't do that diversity just for the sake of the marketing part of it. So I think that's a wrong way to go about it, if it's just on the marketing part.
Yeah, for sure. Gabriel, any thoughts on that, diversity for the sake of diversity, and especially diversity hires? You know, we've heard that term in the industry.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. We should not bring diverse profile just because it's like a fashion, okay? But in the other hand, what we do have in very poor countries, for example, is that some people do not have the opportunity to apply for positions in multinational companies because of the English, for example. So what we do is the following: we establish some quotas because we have people with disability, for example, and we have some, it's mandatory by the government in Brazil to hire people with disability. And the majority of them, they don't have the qualification, they don't have the experience to go and to get the position. So what we do is establish quotas, but we bring it in and we develop this workforce. We promote English course, we promote any other course that is mandatory for them to perform well the position. So you give them the conditions for being able to really perform and perform well and feel recognized by their performance, and then create an environment that they like to be part of.
And just one thing, I think if you are the HR person in an organization that is trying to, just promote diversity for the marketing or the quota or whatever, I think you need to also kind of stand up and say that, I mean, we could do this. And if it's actually not for the essence and the spirit of it, and if these people really don't feel included, in the longer run, it could be, much more harmful. So I think especially if you're in HR, you really need to take that responsibility and try to talk to the management and say, it's just not for the sake of doing it, but you have to have a strategy behind it.
Thanks, ladies. Actually, you gave me headway to a question which was in my mind to ask you. Now, as in many causes, we have seen this whole context and the definition of equality also have evolved, right? Even diversity, because I remember some time back, I was actively involved in a project, and at that time, as Gabriel brought out, having differently abled people was a mainstream topic. So at that time, the corporates were given targets to include a certain percentage or train and take them into their workforces for the CSR reasons and also to make them more inclusive. Then I think about say 5 years back, we have seen the shift to mainly on feminine causes to have a certain percentage of women in their workforce. And what we see now, mainly on the media and on the corporate conversations as well, mainly it's more on the gender, right? The gender equality and inclusiveness. So this shift of interest or the evolving, I must say. So when it is like one section is in mainstream, do you think that the other sectors are getting a little bit neglected, or how do you try to keep the balance in all areas of equality, because we're talking about many different areas?
Yes,
Any
absolutely. Yeah. What I believe is that we don't have a hierarchy of oppression. What I mean by that, all the causes are equally important. All the diversity aspects are equally important. And I do see, in a way, some companies that are working more with the diversity when it comes to gender. But I see also many companies that are establishing different ways of working with different aspects. But what Osana said before, it's really important to take into consideration is because, again, we are talking about different perspectives. We are talking about different needs. And it's really important that we understand that it's not easy to work with different aspects all at the same time, because we need to establish different ways of working. We need a bigger force from the company for delivering these projects, because again, they think and they need differently. So as I said before, the employee resource group in this way, it's really important. So how can we really give a voice to our employees for them to really to organize themselves, because HR is not involved on this kind of initiative in the organization. We are behind that because we really expect that our employees have their own voice to raise. And then when they start in this movement from the bottom, I would say that it's easier to really go through all aspects of diversity and inclusion, because HR alone or the leadership alone, we cannot do this. So I would say that it's very crucial that the employees also be involved on the discussions around diversity and inclusion.
Of course. Oshana, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think again that a lot of sometimes I guess in Sri Lanka, it's a lot of organizations think diversity is just about gender, and obviously it's much more than that. But maybe gender is the one to kind of attack, let's say, easier right now. So I guess you kind of you get your low hanging fruit first, so that's why you take the gender part first, right? Because it's that probably is why I think organizations first pick on the gender part. But as you progress, you definitely need to look at the different aspects. But it's also like, let's say, in terms of ethnicity and ensuring that everyone is respected equally. So for example, when the April 21st Easter attacks happened in last year, right? Something we immediately did was, because we had anyway started our DNI journeys, we spelled it out and we put it out there that, racism in any form or sort will not be tolerated, and we wouldn't. And you, as ambassadors of Fortitude, who have taken a pledge to be better together and saying I am diversity, should not be posting Facebook posts on a certain race and all of that. So you kind of sometimes you would bring it in when there is a situation as well. But I think in Sri Lanka, what I see is that it's easier to attack on the gender part, and then we will get in on to the disabilities and all of it. But saying that, I think we are making progress, because I know Microsoft, for example, is working on some AI programs for disability. And I know Fortitude is also working with Microsoft on it. So definitely we are starting, but it might take a bit of while
Thanks,
to get on to
Oshana.
all aspects of diversity.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. All right, I'm going to throw in an audience question right now. We have a question asking, okay, so in promoting or implementing a policy, training is one option that you use to create awareness. How do you get everyone to walk the talk? How do you implement that?
It's a very good question because some people try to avoid the topic of diversity and inclusion because it's a very sensitive topic. So I remember that I was in a meeting of the board of directors of the company, and then they were saying, "But I cannot say that. I will jeopardize. People will feel invaded." No, of course not. They feel like that if you do not raise your point, if you don't say clear what you expect from them or what is your opinion about that. You need to be open. You need to share your opinion. And also in the Latin America countries, we are very concerned about what people's opinion, okay? What people will think about me if I say, for example, that I support a LGBTQ plus cause. They will think nothing. It's not because you support this cause, it's because you are gay. It's something that it's a bit mixed in our culture, for example. So I do see that trainings are very important for that, but also that you create a culture that support openness, that you support discussions like that you don't feel, okay, I should not raise this point.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, fair enough. Absolutely. Okay, so here's an interesting one. Have we become politically too correct these days? Have we kind of crossed the line? I'm just going to bring an example. I'm a Marvel fan. Like I'm a Marvel fan, and sometime back, I think it might be a couple of years. I'm not very sure. Chris Hemsworth attended a Lone Ranger themed party. Now, for those of you who do not know Lone Ranger, it involves cowboys. It involves Red Indians or Native Indians. So he had dressed as a Native Indian and had gone to this, right? And I'm going to read out. There was a huge uproar on social media. There was and people were angry and all of that stuff. And this is an actual statement that he posted, right? So he said, I would like to take this opportunity to raise something that has been bothering me for some time. Last New Year's Eve, I was at a Lone Ranger theme party where some of us, myself included, wore the traditional dress of First Nations people. I was stupidly unaware of the offense this may have caused and the sensitivity around this issue. I sincerely and unreservedly apologize to all First Nation people for this thoughtless action, and I now appreciate that there is a greater need for a deeper understanding of the complex and extensive issues facing Indigenous communities. Now, this apology caused another uproar because people were like, it was a Lone Ranger theme party, right? And so where do you yeah, so two questions here. Like, should he have apologized? Did he cross the line? And where do we draw the line, right? And it's the same thing to go with Merry Christmas and people now saying Happy Holidays and all that. So where do we draw the line in terms of, in this particular example with Chris Hemsworth, did he cross the line? It's open to anyone to answer. And Oshana, Gabriel, anyone? Yeah.
So I think again, rather than telling whether he crossed the line or not, I think again it's about this being more about publicity, everything.
Okay.
I feel so I think all these so everything they try to if it's you make a story out of it and it's something to do with a diversity topic. So yes, at times it can go overboard, and then actually the ones who are trying to do or execute a diversity agenda for the betterment of the organization and everyone, then it becomes an issue when there's a lot of this everything and I've heard this a lot that now this is an example probably a year ago or 2 years ago, but I mean there are things sometimes that even happen in our country and they would say, oh, either this person was not treated well, or and it's sometimes it's it's more spiced up and there's more tension given, I think then it's actually needed, and then you kind of dilute the actual agenda for diversity.
So when it comes
Yeah.
to advertisement industry, marketing industry, publicity industry, we are full of your stereotypes. And
Right.
for me, a way of doing this is really to guarantee that when you're thinking about a TV show advertisement, for example, we need to have a diverse perspective. We need to avoid stereotypes. So, for example, it's really common that in some very hot countries that the weather is very, very hot, we have these advertisements of beers, and the woman there serving the beer with very short clothes, showing the body, and in a very objectification role. And we need to avoid that. We not should treat a woman as something that is used, okay? And it's these things that maybe the person is okay. We are now very political. It's not about being political. It's about being right and really consider the other's perspective and not only the male perspective when you go to the TV show. Because again, we are treating as minority, but we are the majority, okay? We are the larger number. Women in the world are the larger number. And we are still treated as we are less. We are in a position that we are inferior than the male. And it's wrong, and you should avoid that.
Huh. Interesting. That's an interesting thought. We are getting flooded with audience questions, so I'm gonna ask my co-host to pick one up. Sitari, any questions?
Of course, ladies, this is getting very interesting now, Gabriel, because from the audience we have a question, right? It's like I suggested to my boss that we as a company should pledge for equality on Women's Day and take the pledge for parity. He shot it down by saying that's preferential treatment for women and will discriminate against men. What do I do? So going back to what you just started saying, so it's getting quite interesting. As you say, we're not the minority when it comes to the gender, when you look at the whole world, but this is what is actually happening. Your thoughts, please.
Yes, for sure. And what we do in Brazil, for example, we celebrate everything. So we have also the Man Day. Why not? We are in our organization. We recognize that the men are important in our organization as well. But what you are doing here is that we're trying to implement some affirmative actions. When I say, for example, Black Lives Matter, I'm not saying that Black lives matter most than the others. I'm saying that they are equally important as the others. When I'm celebrating Women's Day, I'm saying that the women are important as the men are important. So it's again, it's about equality. It's about bringing and giving the same opportunities for all. It's not only about gender, guys. I think it's about having the same rights. Okay, in many countries of the world, women do not have the same rights. It's really important to take it in mind when we discuss gender equality.
Yeah, Gabriel, I think you really addressed it really well. I think I would tell my boss exactly what Gabriel said. And that's what I say. It's about, it's about awareness, even to your management or your boss. And you might not get it the first time, right? It might not be the first year. And I would say don't stop trying. At least you had the conversation in the first year then try the next time. Back up with some stats, and as I said, there are enough stats out there, and then there are also organizations now in Sri Lanka like DCLK and all that really work on they work on it from a recruitment stage, from a university stage, from a A-level student stage, where they get women. For example, the IT sector, you don't see many women in the IT sector, so they promote the IT sector and they have trainings, all of it, so that you're ready to get into the workforce. And so there are so many organizations also that can help you, right? So you would try, and you would give something like exactly like what Gabriel said. It's not that one is better than the other. It's just celebrating it. And you will start with small steps, and that's what I keep saying: small steps, nothing
Right.
big.
Yeah, thanks,
Nicely said.
Oshana.
So I'm going to take another one. This is an interesting question that came through, and I need to ask this question. And just to put out a disclaimer, some of the things that we're discussing here, some of the questions that come through, these are not meant to hurt anybody's sentiments, but these are questions, valid questions that are being asked and discussed in the public forum. You may be in the middle of a conversation. You may be in the middle of a friend circle, or you may be on social media and see these kind of questions or responses pop up. And it's important that we raise awareness on such questions being asked and how to respond to them and so on. So this particular question is one such question that an audience member has asked. Okay, so this particular person had asked, my Muslim colleagues get to take time off for prayers every Fridays. I wanted to go to church on Ash Wednesday, and I was asked to take a short leave. Is this fair? So probably Oshana might take a stab at it because it's very this is in the context of Sri Lanka, and then maybe Gabriel can add to it. Yeah. So Oshana, you want to?
So again, I said I think I've been blessed to be in an organization that has respected all religions. So, for example, at Fortitude, all religious holidays, the religion that person can take, even though it's not a mercantile. So that's what we have. One issue we have, right? Let's say it's Poya is a holiday for everyone, but in every other religion, it's only one holiday per religion. That's a mercantile. And then certain then it otherwise goes off your leave quota. So first step we did was any religious holiday is a holiday for that religion. An example for Ash Wednesday, and I believe it's just a few hours. So exactly who, as the person has said, it is short-lived. We do allow it. Some people go in the morning, some people go in the evening, and you see everyone coming in with the cross. And we do allow it because, I mean, what is that? So again, when you're talking to the management, I know it's easy for me to tell you this now, right? But when you tell it to the management, you have to say, okay, I mean, it's 4 hours, right? And if that person is going to be very dissatisfied that, they had to put a leave for that, I mean, what is that 4 hours in the context of everything you do and the hours you give?
For sure.
Yeah.
And that's how I would kind of try to say it, and I would go it on that. I would put it that way, the 4 hours versus everything, rather than compare it to another race that can go into prayers every Friday. That's probably how I would handle it.
Absolutely, and I just want to say one more thing to add to the comment that Oshana just mentioned, and I need to say hello to Chris, who joined us. Hello, Chris.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, Chris.
I think you're on mute.
Chris, you might be on mute.
He's still on.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, we can.
Perfectly. Hello, Chris.
Okay, apologies. Truly apology on the technical issues on my side. But glad to be here, at least to catch the last few minutes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Chris, we're going to go back to Oshana and Gabriel, and we're going to come back to you with one of the areas that we were asking the panel about diversity and equality and what it means, or how would you define it from an organization and from a corporate perspective. So coming back to Oshana, you mentioned that the 4 hours, the larger context is not, it's not a big deal in the larger context. I've worked with someone way back in the past who would respond to that by saying, 4 hours times 100 is 400 man hours gone, and we've had all. I mean, that's not how the math works, but sure. I mean,
I
that's some things that people get. So with that, I'm just going to add that to your to what you shared, and I'm going to put that to Gabriel. And Gabriel, what do you say to that? Have you had experience, with these different? Yeah, exactly. How would you handle it? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have for sure. So for me, this is unacceptable. Okay, and I think this pandemic showed to us that we are moving, and we should have moved some many time ago to a different leadership style. Okay, it's
Sure.
not anymore command and control. It's support and guidance. And what this leader is telling me is that he wants to control everything that the employee is doing. The fact that the guy is leaving 4 hours ahead of the working time, it means nothing, because he can be delivered a lot before, and he can do and establish his region need at that point in time. So for me, this is an acceptable in terms of tradition and a very old-fashioned way of managerial style. Okay, but when it comes to diversity and inclusion itself, I think the main topic is I'm able to bring my whole self to my organization. This is the point here. So
Sure.
we should be open enough. We should understand the differences between our employees. They are different. They have different needs. So for me, this is very. We can have an agreement. He can go on Friday having the moment of prayer that he needs for his religion, and he can do the work in another different day. I don't know, but it's not something that should avoid that he really use their time with something that he needs for feeling better, because it's
Sure.
important for him or for her. Do you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just going to move to Chris and just to give Chris a little bit of a rundown on what we were talking about. We were talking about equality and diversity and the different ways corporations look at it. We were talking about diversity for the sake of diversity and our the practice of organizations hiring minorities or people of a certain social class just to be inclusive or to show that they're inclusive, and even to not get left behind, and how do you tackle it with sincerity. We were talking about that, and we had some fantastic audience questions about bosses not willing to take for women. So there was this question that came in saying the employee wanted to implement certain diversity and equality related policies, wanted to take the pledge, the pledge for parity, and then the boss said, no, that would show that we are preferential for women, and that would discriminate against men. And we were just having that conversation. And the last question was about how a particular race gets to visit their place of worship on Friday, and then how this particular individual had to take leave just to visit the person's place of worship, and then that was a discussion that just took place. So Chris, the question that I would like to throw to you is that from a diversity and equality point of view, how does your organization, or from your experience, how do you get employees to walk the talk, and how do you approach this topic?
Yeah, so we've really focused on driving this amongst in the pension community, and then also the asset managers. And it's probably one of the least diverse industries is when you look at the flow of capital. I mean, you kind of have a compounding impact when you have when the money comes out of government, even starting there at the employees on who's being employed. So from the government level, you have a huge gap as far as who's being employed from the minority community, from the women, from age also. I mean, if you look at the younger people coming in, they're also being left out. A lot of we call them graybeards, as much as I'm catching up very quickly, are the communities that really have the majority say in these communities. And then the biasness of when they, even if they don't necessarily know that they have a biasness, almost everybody does have many different biases that they bring into the interview room. So you find that there's always going to be those kinds of cards being stacked against the interviewee. So a lot of companies, but I would say still a minority, are reporting, different programs that they're using to try to avoid that biasness during those interviews. But then you get into the point where the money goes into the banks, the institutional investors, and then just the regulation and requirements that they have to abide to already starts to channel the money into businesses that are also don't have that diversity at the top, and the money even circulates less into less diverse communities. It goes into less people who are making pensions, and then you have an ongoing cycle that just really doesn't go down. So we really push for asset managers that are coming in. That you have about 8% of the asset managers in the industry that are women and minorities, whereas only 1% of the $71 trillion is currently being invested into these firms. So as much as that's still $750 billion, it's nowhere near 71 trillion. So that's kind of just giving you a kind of quick holistic understanding of the financial industry of that's the U.S. I worked in South Africa for a lot of time, so I'll stick on those two really to begin with. But so there you have a majority population that's been disenfranchised, under apartheid, and currently, if you look at the corporate structures, so you have, those different issues. I think every country has their own historical things that they must deal with, and if you don't come back and say, "How are we going to address what's already happened?" You can't just say like, "Okay, everything's equal," and then you look at communities. I know in Brazil you have a very similar history as America, and South Africa likely was just shifting of the populations. But I think you need to always bear in mind, what do I have to do to get everybody in my country to the equal playing ground and equality? Without that diversity, you won't ever achieve equality.
Sure. Yeah. Spot on. I think we have another audience question. Okay, so do you think companies lower the bar in order to hire people from underrepresented groups, or do you hire and promote the best person of the job regardless of the race or gender? Any thoughts? So we can, since Chris, you spoke, we can maybe continue with Chris and then go around the panel.
Yeah, I think they've proven, in studies that, the diverse group, if you have a bunch of white men, they don't represent the full market. So you already are limiting yourself. So if you're board and your employees do not represent the market that you're trying to be active in, which is a problem, because a lot of times it's an old boys club, especially in the financial sector, where it's hard. But if you really look at the market, you don't want to leave out any segment, because that just cuts you out of that part of the market. However, there needs to be proaction to really ensure that you're meeting those diversity requirements. And if it is a quota system, if it's, sometimes those conversations seem to be, uneasy for some of the boards, but that's just, it's the way it needs to be. It makes more sense. I think now you're starting to see a real kind of, I guess, waking up to the reality of things are not equal, things need to change. And that conversation it's an uncomfortable one for some, but it's happening now. It needs to move more into the economic side and the finance, for sure.
All right, yeah. Gabriel or Shannon, would you like to take a stab at that question?
Gabriel, you can go ahead.
I agree with Chris. I think we have already touched upon these topics before, and it's really important to really understand the society that we are working on as well. It's, as we discussed it before this session, it's really how can our organization really establish actions that could impact positively the environment that the organization is part of. So it's not only about what our organization are doing internally, it's what we are also impacting externally to change the society that we are part. So I think it's really important.
Yeah, once again, I think it's where you are as a location or country, and then as an organization. So it would vary. So the quotas, the quotas would be as a part of measurement and evaluation, and that comes very much later on in the cycle. So something that could be useful to audiences. SHRM, the Society of Human Resource Management, they put in like the DNI strategic process, right? And it has a few steps, and it's a circle, and the steps to circle, right? So you start with executive commitment, you go into preliminary assessment, infrastructure creation, system changes, training, then measurement and evaluation, and then thereafter evolution and integration, and it's a cycle, right? So I think when you're coming in, yes, you need to have the measurements, but don't have them like high up there because you might get demotivated. So start small and know that that whole measurement cycle could be much later on in your journey as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that note, I think we're getting more questions. So Satari, would you like to pick up another question?
Yes, this is a very, I think this is very pertinent in every country. But we have a question from the audience, very specific. I had a boss who would not allow any religious display at the workstation and no tolerance policy of any other religions at all. But expected everyone to participate in a religious practice he organized. What can the senior management or leaders do about such situation? So yeah, it may be one particular incident, but I think we can actually find similar situations in many of the companies that we come to in contact with. What are your thoughts about it? How can the rest of the management, how can being part of the team, how would you advise to handle such situation?
I think first you need to try to understand why is it that you can't display. If I just take that particular situation, right? So if you, why you can't display any religious things on your workstation, and maybe that the organization belongs to one religion and it's just only that happens once. I'm gathering that from the question. And if you're from any other religion and there's something you want to keep in your desk, that's not allowed. So first, I mean, I would try to understand that. Again, I would maybe ask HR, and it's something HR could have a conversation on, and say that, I mean, we can't survive with only people from that one religion, right? Probably what the organization owner is from,
Sure,
right?
sure.
You would have to have a mix. So if you want to have a mix, you will need to be welcoming to what that mix will bring you as well. So you might have to kind of, have that conversation in terms of probably with HR, and try to kind of see, because unless you are trying to, just manage that organization with just one single religion, and it won't be sustainable. And the others will not be motivated as well, right? Because they would feel something like, I can't bring my statue in, and you won't be there, right? You'd be upset about it.
Yeah,
Of
sure.
course, of course. I think it can be regional or maybe onto a certain situation, but I think this is something we experience. So, any thoughts on how to handle it? Because this is from the audience, so I think yeah, it can be very pertinent in some individuals' lives, right?
Yeah.
I think an important factor that we didn't discuss so far, it's the cultural diversity, okay? In the same organization, you can have different cultures, because I can come from a different
Absolutely.
country. And when it comes to Brazil, it's a continental country. So within the country, we have different cultures as well. So it's really
Right.
important that you understand as an organization and as HR, these differences, and we accept and we make it available at the work, at the day-by-day work, so they can really bring in their whole selves to work. But I really appreciate the comment from Lozana, because I think it's very important to understand the organization itself has its culture. So it's really important to understand the organization that you are working for, because sometimes we are in a position that you are asking a lot from the company without understand what the company can provide or not. So it's really important that we put ourselves in the organizational places as well, because we are asking empathy all the time. So it's really important to understand the possibilities in the work environment as well. It's not because they do not like or they do not allow, it's sometimes it's not possible.
Yeah, true. So that brings a different perspective, actually. Thanks, Gabriel. Chris, any thoughts on that? Any experiences that you'd like to share on how to handle such situation?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's great to push, and allow, everybody to be able to appreciate that, whoever they, whatever God or worship or however religion that they, want to subscribe to. And I think, in some places, where there's conflicts that are ongoing, a friend of mine in Lebanon, for instance, has an accelerator, which is a venture capital. So they try to bring in entrepreneurship from both the Syrian side and from the Lebanese side. And, they have literally outside of their building is semi-wars. Yeah. So I think you have those kinds of situations that obviously, but then to have them like one day and say, okay, today, we're going to celebrate only one religion, it would be very bad. I think in that respect of how the audience raised the question, it's only one-sided. They only agree to one religion. So I think that's a very that complicates. It's one thing if you just keep religion out of the business and you just want to do that to maintain peace, because it really
for sure
the wrong way, and especially if you have one guy on one side of a cubicle and the other one on the other side, and they're having like their own little religious war back and forth. You don't.
Yeah, for sure.
But at the same time, you don't want to say, okay, now everybody must come to my religion day, and that's just, I think,
for sure. Absolutely. I think that's spot on, Chris. I actually have a solution. This is a funny story. I hope nobody takes offense of this. So this was about 5 or maybe 6 years ago in one of the organizations I was working. There was a rumor that one of our floors was, basically haunted. Somebody had seen, something on the floor, and at that time it was like, bring a priest from every religion. I mean, and the question was like, only 4 religions? Could we have more? Because nobody wanted to take a chance to come back. So that everyone bring them all in. Let's cover all the bases. Let's just make sure. So it was hilarious, but at the same time, at that. Yeah, it actually happened, and at that moment, everybody was, focused, and all religions were accepted, and so that story just popped to my mind. So all right, so I think we're a little over time, and there was this one question. Actually, we've had like 4 questions about being discriminated, in terms of taking maternity leaves and so on. And we were having, we briefly discussed during the test call, yesterday. And what do you say? Like, because I've been a part of conversations where people just say, like, I mean, having a child is a personal choice. Nobody asks a person to have a child. And now you decide to have a child, and now the company is expected to, pay for maternity leave, and now you need to find somebody to cover up for during this person's absence. And I think Sitari has personal experience going through, a similar situation. And we have, even in today's world, like bosses, managers who speak like this. I've been in the middle of a conversation. Sitari has been, in the thick of such conversations. What do you say to them, for somebody who's like, why am I, penalized, or why do I have to pay the full salary when somebody goes on leave? And just to add to that, just to shed some light on that, Gabriel and Chris, like our maternity laws, like it's written in the law, like it's mandated that you have to give 84 days. Is that right? 84 days, Sitari?
Yeah, 84 working days.
Working days. and that's quite a long time. And but so it's been mandated, and then you have nursing breaks, and you have a lot of leave kind of built into this law, and we often see managers talking about it. And so, what are your thoughts on that? Sitari, anything to add to that question before it goes to the panel?
Yeah, I think I can relate that to a point that Gabriel actually brought up earlier. Like, the women, we are talking about gender equality and also the representation. Though we are the majority of the gender, we are not represented equally in the workplace. So I think that's why even in a country, we're talking Sri Lanka in this case, that we had to have the laws or the legislations built into to provide for maternity leave. Because I think in culturally also, it is very different from country to country. That's what I see. So I think because we are not represented equally, and also to provide for the wholesome representation of the gender, I think since it was not looked into, we had to build that into the legislation system, which has actually helped some organizations to understand the importance of it. But of course, there is this conversation coming out saying that if you're asking for equality, why should I be paying for your personal choice of having a baby or being a mother? So it's a very touchy, it's very sensitive. Me being a mom, me being a woman, I've gone through this. I've come into not so much into confrontations, but it's a very live and a pertinent situation. So
for sure.
yeah. So this is my experience. I would like to ask the other ladies to share.
Oshana, Chris, and Gabrielle, any thoughts?
Yes, absolutely. I'm very eager to talk about this topic because, as you said very, very well before, it's a problem in the society, okay? Because this kid was born with a father and a mother. Both should have the same responsibilities when it comes to raise this kid. And what I mean by that is the following. In my previous experience in my company, there was a parental leave. It was not maternity or paternity leave. It was parental leave. Right. And they had the same period of leave. Okay. So, for example, if I was married with a woman that just had a baby, I could have the same period of absence as her. So in Brazil, it was 6 months of maternity leave. So the father of this child should also have 6 months of this leave. Why that? Because so when we combine both leave periods, this kid that was just born, she or he will have the presence of the father or the mother for 1 year. So the first period was for the mother, and the second period was for the father. And the father should take the totality of the period to really stay with the kid and raise that kid and have the same responsibilities. This is what we call equality. Okay? Absolutely. Because we should, as women, we should not be penalized just because we are the one generating this kid, this child, It's both responsibilities. Sure. So we really need to build a work environment that understand that a woman should not be penalized because she in the future would like to have a kid or not. And this kind of question should not even appear in a recruitment anymore, Because I should not hire a person because she's a woman or she's a man. I should hire a person because the person is competent to deliver the job.
Yes, Gabriel, and I'm thinking, why didn't I have my 2 kids in Brazil? Now
Yeah.
But again, it's not for all the companies. It was at Equinor, which is a Norwegian company, Scandinavian culture. So it's a very
Right.
different mindset. Okay,
All right.
we were
Okay.
pioneer in Brazil implementing this parental leave in the past, 1 year, 2 years ago. But what we are doing in my current company, for example, is increasing the parental leave, because we do
Okay.
believe that, again, it's both responsibility. It's the man and woman responsibility to raise a kid.
And can I just jump in and from a naive point of view, can I ask you, did you see a drop in performance or a drop in productivity or during that period? Did you see anything, or did it actually like
Not at
once?
all. In
Okay.
fact, it was something that was very important. And then coming to employer branding, the image of the company, the marketplace, it was incredible. People were like, oh my gosh, do we work for this company? Do you really, do you feel it's a great environment? I love to go to work for your company. And do you know what thing? It was what the company really lives. So give you another example. When I was there, I had some leaders that hired a woman that was in fact pregnant, okay? Knowing that in 6 months, this resource would be gone for maternity leave.
All right.
So we had cases that woman was employed when they were pregnant. I was promoted when I was pregnant.
Oh, great.
So again, it does not mean anything
Yeah.
about performance.
So,
Yeah,
all right,
so
a
just
quick thought from
yeah.
the rest, because we are running out
Yeah.
of time, but what we want to hear your thoughts, Oshana,
Yeah,
and then
so just
Chris.
to yeah, Varun. So actually I had that where I interviewed a candidate and she went through the final interview process. And then we gave her the offer, and then she had said, oh, I have to tell you this. I just discovered that I was pregnant, and will that be an issue? And I was shocked that, she said that she asked that thinking, and she had said, I totally understand if you all withdraw the offer. So when my recruiter came and told me this, it was the first time this has happened to me in my 14-year career. But we were like, no, it's fine. One is she's being honest, because she could have just come to work and then said
That's
it, right? I
right.
mean, honesty, right? There's honesty and integrity. That's the key value. No, let's hire her. And she gave her best, and she had a baby, and she's back at work. Right. So it has happened to me. It happened to me probably about 2 years ago, and it was the first. So, but for her to kind of, say it's okay if you are not going to offer me, means it is out there. As you said, Sita, like there are people who look at, oh my God, maternity leave is 84 days. But again, you have to think of, yes, you need to give that time off. It is legislation, right? But they would continue to still be with your company thereafter and contribute. So you can't, again, is it that you can then run a company with only males, right? If you're going to, because it's a mix. It's what does that mix bring to you? And again, paternity leave is something also that we did introduce, because that also helps. So it helps both ways, right? So yes, we do also have paternity leave.
Yeah, I just,
Chris, yeah.
I think with, each country, the kind of safety nets that are available, in those countries. I mean, in the U.S., there's some are, it really varies state to state on maternity leave in some different places. And you have some that are, they will fire you very quickly, especially at the lower paying jobs, unfortunately. It's just the right to work states and part.
Yeah.
And yeah, I agree 100% with the Scandinavian too. And to have that kind of relationship between your employees, there's a very unhealthy relationship in lots of corporates where the employee and the employer are on opposite sides. And the employee hates to go to work. The employer just sees them as an extra cost that they could, one day hopefully get rid of with innovation. And, there's that very ugly kind of back and forth. Whereas the best productivity is like what you're saying, is to have somebody who's energized to go to work, wants the company to succeed. And you'll get that if you treat your employees right with paternity leave. And I definitely think the men getting 6 months would be a great addition into any company.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think just we are 20 minutes over, and just to wrap up this session, one tip that you can give organizations or managers, to embrace equality and diversity. Your if you had one advice or one tip to give them, what would it be? And we'll start with Chris, and then we'll go to Gabriel and finish off with Oshana.
I think, the hiring is just the first step. I think once you get inside, you have to make sure that you deal with the team and get all people to understand and work with each other and really, celebrate diversity. It's not just, you can have, them in the door, but then it can be even more uncomfortable inside. So I think, getting inside and doing team building and making sure that you understand the cultures of the people in your organization is critical. And continuing to stay up to date and be on top of it, and what are the trends, and being right there and being a leader. And
Sure.
So when it comes to diversity and equality and inclusion, I would say 3 words. For me, it's about openness, it's about persistence, and about continuity. It's not easy. We are learning along the way, and you need to be open and have consistent actions to really adapt on what is required and needed by our employees along the way, and our company as well. So I would say that don't give up. It's difficult. It's a different way of thinking, because they really need to see from their perspective rather than ourselves, but it's worth.
So I'd like to leave everyone with a tip on how we kind of rolled out or brought in the diversity aspect on a management angle, because I think I see from the questions that becomes that's one of the frequent questions, right?
Yeah.
So what we said was, okay, there are going to be 4 corners in the room to the entire management team, and go pick your corner, right? So we said first, everyone with long hair, to your left, long hair, short hair, bald, colored hair. Then we had another one saying, if your favorite color is blue, red, green, or purple, what's the school you went to? In Sri Lanka, schools have this thing. Are you a royalist, a Thomian, a nun, or a girls' school, right? And then everyone started realizing that they're shifting between the groups, right? And then when you said, okay, everyone who's a management team member at Fortitude, it's just one group, right? So there's so much differences in us. Leave aside whether it's gender or ethnicity or race or whatever. Everything else is also so much difference, right?
Yeah.
And then you just bring it all together. And that was a really good exercise, because, okay, you might think it's a bit silly, but when you start doing it, you'll say, oh, you're going to all 4 corners of the room, you're mixing with different people, but you are actually, in the end, one still. So I'd like to leave you with that exercise.
Oh, we should try that out over here. And thank you for sharing that. All right. So with that, I'm afraid we're out of time. We come to a close of today's conversation on diversity and equality. Are we there yet? So a big thank you to our guests, Oshana, Gabriel, and Chris. Thank you for being here. It's been a pleasure. Do stay back for a couple of minutes after the call, and we'll wrap up afterwards. And again, thank you for the Luminary team for putting this together, and thank you for the audience for your questions, comments, and feedback throughout the session. You've been fantastic. All right, so next week we'll be speaking to the Executive Vice President of Epic Group, Dr. Vidura Ralapanove, and the highly accomplished Chaminda Serasinger, consultant for sustainable innovation, and we'll be talking about sustainability, myth or reality. So don't forget to tune in next week. I'm Varun Chandra Mohan. Thank you for joining us today. See you next Saturday.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.